continue our music legacy. And I just think such a small thing for a great joy. And I just love doing that. And we're doing these guitars, I believe, for the veterans.
He's 85 now, and when James Burton curls his fingers around a Telecaster, the room still goes quiet on instinct. Not because of fame, or flash, or a wall of amps, but because somewhere in the hush, you can almost hear a voice he knew better than anyone else on stage. Play it, James. For decades, Burton kept that memory like a lit match, cupped against the wind. He let the music speak. He let the stories belong to the myth. He carried the weight of a friendship that was equal parts laughter, gospel, sweat, and unspoken trust. Tonight, that changes. This isn't another retelling of rhinestones and tabloid endings. This is the band leader who stood at the singer's shoulder through the wild highs and the brutal lows, the man who stitched solos into a voice that could blow out an arena and still sound like a prayer. Burton isn't here to defend Elvis Presley, and he isn't here to tear him down. He's here to tell you what it felt like when the lights dropped, when the orchestra held its breath, when the cue came and the king turned, not as an icon, but as a friend who leaned on the only person who could cut through the roar and steady the ship. What did he really see behind the curtain? How kind was Elvis when no one was looking? How close did the music come to saving him? And how close did the machine come to breaking them all? By the time we're done, you won't just know what James Burton remembers. You'll know why he chose to speak now, and why the last true witness to those nights believes the truth is louder than legend. Before the spotlights, before Vegas tuxedos and the TCB lightning bolt, there was a skinny kid in Dubberly, Louisiana, hunched over a cheap guitar that wouldn't stay in tune. He didn't have lessons. He had a radio, a stubborn ear, and a restlessness that made his hands move faster than his doubts. He learned by stealing phrases from the air, half a lick from a gospel broadcast, the snap of a country shuffle, the blue curl of a swamp melody, and stitching them together until they sounded like something new. If the chord chart said don't, James Burton found the place it secretly meant do. By his teens, he was a quiet phenomenon around Shreveport, where Saturday nights belonged to the Louisiana Hayride. The same stage that once gave an unpolished Elvis Presley, his shot turned into Burton's classroom. Steel guitars cried, fiddles danced, and house bands tried to keep up. James just listened, waited, and then dropped in the precise note you didn't know you were waiting for. He wasn't loud, he was right, every time. The family didn't have much, but what they had was work and church. Those two anchors shaped a kid who treated music like a trade. He practiced like a carpenter learns grain, learning where sound bends and where it breaks. By the time most boys were worrying about dances, James was getting calls from grown men to sit in, cut demos, and fix tricky passages they couldn't sing. Opportunity knocked from the West Coast. Los Angeles, television, real studios, big stakes. He went. One look from band leaders, one chorus on a Telecaster, and doors opened. Soon he was standing beside teen idol Ricky Nelson, transforming tidy pop into something leaner, meaner, and cleaner. The tone was already there. Glass bright, knife precise, no wasted motion. In rooms full of egos, James Burton spoke softly and let his hands explain the rest. Walk into any garage where a kid is learning guitar, and there's a decent chance you'll hear the swampy, hypnotic churn of Susie Q. That riff didn't just appear. It was James Burton's calling card, carved out in the late 1950s for Dale Hawkins. It wasn't flashy, it was inevitable. A pulsing, low-string mantra that turned 3 chords into a spell. Years later, Creedence Clearwater Revival would stretch it into a trance, but the DNA was pure Burton, economy, groove, menace you could dance to. By the early 60s, Los Angeles studios learned a quick truth. If a track needed backbone and brains, you called James. He had a knack for finding the one line that glued a song together, and he did it without crowding the singer. On Shindig, he made network television feel like a roadhouse, all snap and sparkle, a masterclass in how to say more with fewer notes. Producers started stacking his schedule: rock one morning, country in the afternoon, pop at night, and the records kept landing on the radio. With Ricky Nelson, Burton refined a new template for lead guitar: bright, stinging runs that never wandered, solos that felt like second verses rather than detours. Then came the broader canvas: Everly Brothers harmonies needing steel-nerved filigree, Merle Haggard's Bakersfield Bite wanting X-Acto knife fills, Glenn Campbell's studio symphonies requiring touch so clean it vanished into the arrangement. He could sit with Johnny Cash and leave space, or with Emmylou Harris and paint air, or with Graham Parsons and Joni Mitchell and make country ache like poetry. When he picked up a dobro for Buffalo Springfield's A Child's Claim to Fame, it was proof he wasn't a one-trick teleslinger. He was a mood architect. The through line was discipline. James didn't chase licks, he chased purpose. He understood that a perfect 8 bars could live in a listener's head for decades, and that the greatest compliment a guitarist can earn is simple and rare: the singer breathes easier when you're there. The second time Elvis Presley called, James Burton picked up. The first call, back around the '68 TV special, had collided with too many sessions and too much travel. But by the summer of 1969, something bigger was happening. Elvis wasn't just returning to the stage. He wanted to rebuild how he did it. He needed a musical compass, someone who could take 1,000 moving parts: orchestra, rhythm section, backing vocals, brass, a screaming crowd, and cut a clear path through the noise. He needed James. Burton didn't just say yes. He started building. Piece by piece, he helped assemble a unit that could turn on a dime. A drummer with jet engine stamina, a bassist who could anchor a stadium without stepping on the vocal, keyboards that could shift from church to Vegas in a bar, a rhythm guitarist who kept the pocket locked while James painted the edges. It wasn't a hired gun gig anymore, it was a living machine. The motto came with lightning bolts: TCB, taking care of business. And it wasn't a slogan on a necklace, it was a work ethic. Rehearsals felt like controlled thunderstorms. Elvis would call a gospel tune, then whip into rhythm and blues, then test a country deep cut he hadn't touched in years. James stood half a step behind and to the side, reading the shoulders, the breath, the half smile that meant, take it. That's where the on-stage cue was born. Elvis pivots, nods, and says the 5 words that turned arenas into living rooms. Play it, James. No overplaying, no fireworks for their own sake. Just a line that carried the melody forward and landed Elvis exactly where he wanted to sing. The look became part of the legend. Fender had sent over a wild pink paisley Telecaster, too loud visually for most players. Elvis loved it. On that big stage, the guitar's shimmer cut through the sequins like a second spotlight, and overnight the paisley became Burton's calling card. But the real signature was sound, bright enough to slice, warm enough to hold, disciplined enough to leave space for the voice that mattered. What Elvis got from James was confidence. In a show that could swing from Suspicious Minds to sanctified gospel to rockabilly revival, Presley knew there was one constant behind his left shoulder: a pair of hands that could turn chaos into clarity, and a band leader who took care of business so the king could be the king. From 1969 to 1977, the calendar read like a marathon. Vegas residencies, national arenas, quick turns into the studio, then back to the stage before the dust settled. In that grind, James Burton learned the unglamorous math of greatness: sleep less, tune more, and make every note count. He wasn't the show's face, but he was its spine, calibrating tempos, cueing figures, smoothing the hairpin turns when Elvis shifted from rock and roll swagger to a gospel hush in the space of a breath. The sound was a philosophy. Burton chased articulation, not volume. Glass-bright attack that could ride above an orchestra without carving the singer to ribbons. He'd roll off treble until the sting turned sweet, pick near the bridge for focus, then ease his right hand to warm the edges. No pedal circus, no pyrotechnic ego. If you closed your eyes, you could draw the silhouette of his tone, a clean line, a small bend, a note that lands exactly where the voice needs a handhold. Even as the Elvis machine roared, Burton kept a craftsman's parallel life. He cut a solo album, slipped into sessions, even stole brief seasons with other bands, then returned the second Presley called. The loyalty wasn't contractual, it was personal. Backstage, Elvis asked after families, laughed at bad coffee, and made room for ideas. Arrangements weren't commandments, they were conversations. If a figure didn't lift the lyric, they'd rethink it. If a key change felt like theater instead of truth, they'd move it. When something worked, Elvis turned with that fast grin only the band could see. On stage, the trust was total. No in-ears, no safety rails, just body language and a cue. Play it, James. Burton answered with 8 bars that steadied the room, brought the brass in clean, and set the drums to boil, always landing the singer back on the one. It wasn't a sideman and star. It was a partnership. Elvis gave the crowd his whole heart. James made sure they could hear it. Market Square Arena, Indianapolis. The date on the board read June 26, 1977, but the room felt like 1956 and 1973 and every burning year in between. Elvis was tired. Anyone close could see it. The schedule was punishing, the medications heavy, the body not cooperating with the mind that still wanted to outrun the spotlight. But when the house lights sank and the first cheer rolled across the seats, instinct took over. He straightened the cape, flashed the grin, and went to work. From his spot just behind and to the left, James Burton did what he always did. Read the shoulders, the breath, the tiny cues that meant adjust the tempo, open the pocket, give the singer room. The show moved like a river, old rockers with a new bite, big ballads that asked the brass to swell without steamrolling the story, a gospel turn that hushed even the back rows, and then the look. Elvis pivoted, eyebrows up, a silent question he and James had been answering for years. Play it, James. 8 bars, then 12, clean, singing notes that threaded the band back to the melody and set Elvis down exactly where he needed to land. No grandstanding, no last night of the world theatrics, just the partnership doing what it was built to do. When the applause finally thinned and the goodnights were said, there was no sense of endings. The plan was simple: a little rest at Graceland, then back out. See you soon. 7 weeks later, on August 16, everything stopped. Found unresponsive at Graceland. Rushed to Baptist Memorial Hospital, pronounced in the mid-afternoon. Phones rang. News anchors fumbled. Fans gathered at gates and kitchen radios. For James, the final memory that rose above the noise wasn't a headline, it was a cue. Elvis turning with that half smile and 5 words that made the arena feel like a living room. The last play at James wasn't a farewell. It was the truest picture of who they were together. A singer reaching, a guitarist answering, the music carrying them both. When James Burton finally opens the door on who Elvis was off stage, the picture isn't glitter, it's gentleness. Not soft, never that, but a steady, deliberate kindness that showed up in small moments most people would miss. He remembers a singer who could be dead on his feet and still stop to ask a trumpet player about his daughter's recital, who pressed per diems into the hands of new crew members because first weeks are expensive, who noticed when a hotel waitress looked rattled and left a tip that turned a month around. The headline version of Elvis is The Hurricane. Burton's version is The Eye. He talks about the music, always the music, as the place where Elvis told the truth. If the set list looked like a jukebox, Elvis treated it like a sanctuary. He'd push through pain until the gospel section arrived. Then the posture changed. Shoulders loosened, eyes lifted slightly, voice widening as if a window had cracked open in the ceiling. Burton swears you could feel the air shift. The room of thousands would act like a choir of one. On those nights, he says, the world's noise fell away, and you could hear why Elvis sang in the first place. The band wasn't furniture to Elvis. They were co-conspirators in a good kind of trouble. He asked for ideas. He liked being surprised. Let's try it that way. If a solo said something true, it stayed. If an arrangement smothered the lyric, it got stripped to the studs. When the machine around them grew louder, handlers, headlines, the endless itinerary, Elvis used the show to carve out a human space where trust still mattered and grace could breathe. Burton doesn't ignore the weight. There were bad nights, foggy afternoons, conversations that trailed off into a silence everyone respected. But he refuses the caricature. The man he knew was tender with people and ruthless about giving audiences everything. Play it, James, wasn't flaunting it. It was to help me tell them. And James did, one clean line at a time. In the end, James Burton didn't come forward to rewrite the legend. He came to tune it, to take the noise out of the story until what's left is the frequency he heard for 8 unforgettable years. A great singer trying, failing, trying again, and giving himself away every night because that was the only way he knew. The tabloids gave us rhinestones and wreckage. Burton gives us the person who looked after his band, who lit up at gospel changes, who turned on his heel in front of an ocean of faces and trusted a friend with 5 simple words. Play it, James. That cue is the map to everything. It means partnership over ego. It means discipline over chaos. It means a kindness so ordinary it gets lost in the spotlight, and a craft so exact it disappears into the song. At 85, Burton's silence breaks not with scandal, but with gratitude. For the stages, for the work, for the man who asked him to carry the melody when it mattered. So remember Elvis as you must, the icon, the hurricane, the history. But keep this too, from the only place that never lies, the bandstand. Somewhere in the roar, a Telecaster finds 8 perfect bars, and a friend comes home on the one.